Exclusivity is dead, especially the third party kind. One of the debate team members, Sean Layden of the VG Fight School channel, even though he doesn't know that he's an honorary member of the channel, I claim you, Sean, has basically come out to pretty much point out a few things that we all know. Here's the thing. When this Destin's interview, shout out to Destin for putting this interview together, came out, I put some timestamps just to go ahead and indicate what in the world is going on. Believe you me, none of these folk who were here responding even bothers to address anything that Sean Layden even said before they all started trying to, throw shade or try to drag me or say this and this and that. When in reality, we all know where this thing is going. What we're going to do is we're going to listen to what Sean said, and we're going to see if he truly believes in the old school exclusivity paradigm, that he was probably one of the first few that fomented it back in the day.
And so MJS, in retrospect, do you believe that paying for game exclusivity and exclusive content on PlayStation was the right decision? He really gets into it. He says, from both a moral and industry-wide perspective, did it bring any specific benefits to players, such as helping to fund a struggling studio or launching an indie hit? So on the one hand, asking about the morality of game exclusivity. On the other hand, was there a positive benefit to having that exclusivity?
I think there's a positive benefit to that exclusivity. It was what drove the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 markets. When Sony got...
Before you go, he continues, I want to caveat something. Think Ballistic Moon, think Deviation Games in this category. Think Firewalk. Because that last piece of the question said, did it help maybe an indie studio come up the ground? There is a side to that question that is much deeper than the surface. I just wanted to go ahead and caveat that. But let's let Mr. Layden continue.
In the business back in '94, Sony knew that the company, being new to the gaming space, with producers like me who didn't know what they're doing, working there, they had to be third-party friendly. The success of PlayStation would not be based on PlayStation games in the 90s. It'd be based on, can you get FF7 guys to abandon Nintendo and come onto PlayStation?
The only person I heard make this argument, or the first person I heard make this argument, was GameStar, the YouTuber that talks about a lot of the old PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 things. Guy is a freaking historian. When he said it, I had to run around and go do some research because I had never heard it before. I never owned the early Nintendo consoles. I never owned a PS1 and 2. I think the PS1 that I used at one point was a buddy of mine who said, hey man, I have two PlayStation 1s. You want to borrow one for a bit? I was like, I love you. Appreciate it, bro. And that's how I, got to basically play a bunch of video games. But then, you know how Africa is. You need to be studying to be a doctor and blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't be playing video games and all this stuff. But I was quite surprised that these games were actually exclusive to another platform. And then when they came to PlayStation, they were basically third-party exclusive deals to help them, according to Mr. Layden, kind of bolster their ecosystem. More to come.
Can you be the platform for games like Resident Evil, which had never been seen before, survival horror kind of games? So Sony did, and then Tekken and Ridge Racer, because the law was you can't launch a platform without Tekken and Ridge Racer. So those exclusives were crucial to getting PlayStation some altitude, because there's no way PlayStation could build their way against the Sonic Empire and build their way against the Mario Empire.
Do you know that this statement actually is an indictment to that organic, argument that PlayStation players actually make? Oh, PlayStation builds up those studios. When Activision was about to be purchased by Microsoft, you should have seen a lot of the fomenting that was going on. Oh, Naughty Dog and all this. PlayStation, built them from ground up organically. The person that was there at the time is saying that without these exclusives of already established studios, PlayStation wasn't going to get its rise against the existing competition that was on the market. See, if there's one community of gamers that can actually try to edit history in real time, I've seen some PlayStation players actually attempt that crap. Like, man, I get it. I play on PlayStation and I play on Xbox, but man, not till I started talking about the gaming industry did I see some crazy elements actually try to make up stuff. It's wild.
PlayStation had to be the people's platform, if you will, and allow other parties to come there and be successful. So I think what we did, particularly in Japan, to bring people exclusively to the platform was strategic and important. And we replicated that model in the US and in Europe. But at the time, let's be honest, PlayStation 1, there were so many games coming out. I mean, talk about exclusivity, but the first party games, which are by definition exclusive,
Bombshell coming.
never held more than 20 or 22% of the software market for PlayStation games. Unlike Nintendo, which routinely has 80 to 85% of their software market, or at the time, Sega had a huge slice of their software market.
Now, let me pause here and let me address the comments of those that were trying to drag me. When I left the timestamp, I said dead console war, dead exclusivity as well. The dead console war side, we'll talk about that later. But Lamarcus GD7, Wooden's Throne 5212, and Venator 2694. The three of you came out and started to either point out some day and date talk or Nintendo talk. Wooden's Throne 5212, you said try telling Nintendo that. Well, I don't know if you heard just now that Nintendo basically gets about 80% in terms of its own participation sales and its own console platform from its own first-party games. Let me give you a very interesting moniker that I just came up with. There's no amount of watching a video of somebody eating a steak that's going to make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich that you have in your hand ever taste or feel like that steak. So pretty much you could be eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and watching a video of some chef make a really wonderful steak, but there's no amount of transmutation that you want to hope for that's going to make that steak eventually become your PB&J sandwich. PlayStation players, you are not Nintendo. PlayStation is not Nintendo. This trend has even continued with the barrage of live service games. So the fomenting of all the narrative that PlayStation exclusives and the quality and the stuff that Nib has basically been saying on the internet is a bunch of hogwash. I mean, just look at, one of my debate team members here, meme level debate team members, pretty much pointing out this reality in PlayStation side. So you came out and said no day and dates from a PlayStation boss himself. Then wouldn't you said try telling Nintendo that? And then you came out and said Nintendo are going to keep making their IP games, they're making their games exclusive. They found a way to make money with their IPs outside of gaming, theme park locations, movie, and museum and merchandise. And then Vinny Minotaur, you said so exclusives are dead and Nintendo was still continuing the traditional strategy. Mind explaining that? If you had watched the video, you would have understood why they keep the traditional strategy on. Simply because, as Sean Layden said, there is a huge disparity, like 20-something% to 80-something%. Goodness, the Switch 2, though, is more than likely going to change that percentage, and it's going to be interesting to see how Nintendo navigates through that. However, Nintendo is still making games as if it was 1998 or 2001, where their games are costing like 10 million or so to, I don't know if it's 10 million, but costing way less than everybody else to make and being sold at a higher cost and making them a lot of money. But PlayStation is not in the same position, nor are they in the same boat. And what's wild is we now have another wild card. That's the live service game. That has not only caused for this to be a thing, but if you look at, say, PlayStation financials, let's go ahead and look at it. Just recently, I have it right here. PlayStation Famitsu has a PlayStation financials thing on there. PlayStation financials. And it talks about it right here. It talks about how, when PlayStation Q4 report came out, I'm going to get it up here for you guys. Here where they have that PlayStation sold 75 million console units, they also were one of the few that reported this, that their own software sales were down. When Daniel Ahmad said that the reason their software sales were even at 11.6 million units was simply because of Helldivers 2, that's when I knew that something was actually different about the entire gaming landscape from a software part that I wasn't even aware of, and it made matters much worse for them trying to pretend like exclusivity was something that they could, in a sense, depend on. Because look at the games that have been played on PC, Steam US, Steam Canada, Steam Mexico, and you'll see that Helldivers 2 has maintained a top 10 position on PC for the longest time. So the one game that really did carry them in terms of their software sales was a multi-platform game. So all of you that are on PlayStation that continue to think that Nintendo is doing it, hence it's some viable market strategy for PlayStation, you're not addressing what the data said. You're so busy trying to drag VG on the internet, and you end up dragging yourselves. Like, I don't even have to do anything. That's why I just sit here and, like I said, Yoshida, Phil Spencer, Herman Holst, and Sean Layden, add any other executive that you want in there, and in a meme sense, it's an inside joke, are members of my debate team. They're all pretty much dancing to the market. Every single one of them has to acknowledge that the market has shifted drastically. Now, let's finish up what he says about this particular conversation.
So I think buying the exclusives were important to give some throw weight to the PlayStation community. I don't think there's a moral question around that.
It's just business.
It's business, and it's to make yourself stand out. It's like everyone wants to have features other people don't.
Now, I have to say, in the time that they were doing their own exclusivity deals, I don't know exactly what those consisted of. I have to be very fair here. However, when PlayStation got denied by Pearl Abyss, the exclusivity deal actually was designed to block the game from going to Xbox. The ethical premise of that is questionable at best, because what that would have done to the Xbox consumer is put them in a place where they can't play a game that was already designed and developed to go to them. Do you hear what I'm saying? That kind of exclusivity deal, the one that's designed to block your competitor from getting a game that's already been designed and promised to its user base, there are ethical questions behind that I don't think anybody can just brush over with its business. Now, when they were attracting those Japanese developers, maybe all they were doing was getting them from Japan to come on PlayStation. Xbox wasn't really a factor in there. I don't know. Maybe they were. Maybe they've been blocking games from Xbox for decades. I don't know. But there are some of them that we do know, like this one here. We are quite aware, having seen the developer even respond and say, "Oh, we enjoy this and this and this," but also pointing to Stellar Blade, which is possibly another one, and I say possibly, that would have had the stipulation to block the game from going to Xbox.
And some companies that did exclusive deals, had they not done that deal, that game maybe didn't get made because no one else was putting money out there to get them.
Okay, so maybe, like he said, some companies, maybe he knows something that we don't know. Maybe some companies receive funding. We get it. In that regard, it probably maybe will make sense. Go put money in, help them out, get the game out or whatever it is. But some games, the companies would have gotten a lot of investment just by the way the developers had presented everything. They could have gotten outside investors just from interest. But going out there to go block the game that is already promised to an audience is pure malice, in my opinion. At best, has ethical questions that you can raise against it.
So I think net, it's a positive, but no studio has to be exclusive.
You're right.
You can choose your own adventure.
That's why the last video I made, I said Square Enix made its bed with Final Fantasy exclusivity. Now it's got a lie in it.
But now today, more platforms are doing multi-platform, and that's largely because it takes that much addressable market to make back your $250 million investment.
Those of you that were trying to drag me, are you listening? You didn't listen, so you were quick to speak. Now look at what he's saying.
Yeah. There's more risk-taking. It was a bit more fun when it only cost $5 million to make a game.
Yeah, right. A little bit different at that time.
Did you hear that? When it only costs $5 million, you could easily just do it. But when it costs you $200 million and years, right? Because with the $200 million, you could have broken it down to a few, 10 millions here and there and made tiny little games and been multi-plat and had a good ROI at the end of the day. But you don't spend 4, 5, 6 years crunching out one game and then you go lock down your game outside of some markets. You're going to see abysmal sales, especially if you're not a platform that has that 80%, bag reach like, Nintendo does. it's so sweet to feel vindicated in your own, in your own assertions, especially when your assertions were based on the evidence that were there in the face of those who were detractors, who thought being, maybe pedantic or maybe being irresponsible with how they responded was the way to go, which it wasn't. Talk to me in the comment section. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate y'all so much. Peace out.